And now music studio plantation. Plantation in Kenya, we have 150, 790 plantations. But forest, which I did for the capital. And this is back to the forest Kenya. In Kenya, we have got 29 million hectares of forest. And in this plantation, we grow the composition of the plantation and we grow and we have got a technical irrigation, age of 30. Meaning that we will not after 30 years, because when you are non-maize, you live forever. They will die and rot. So if they die and rot, it will also release carbon to the atmosphere. We have a study that both meats, we need animal. That is why we have and this is we are working for us. In this plantation, we grow so much and we grow and we have meaning that we will after that for plywood and really get plywood forever. So we have meats, we need animal. We are told them to use the high-efficiency cover machines, like timber, wood misers. So they went for loan. They went to bank to borrow. They went bank to borrow. So before the ban, there was also and this is we are working for us. In this plantation, we grow so much and we grow and we have meaning that waiting. And this is we are working for us. In this plantation, we grow so much and we grow and we have meaning so it is away of looking at the carbon. It is the best way because the exhaust very fast. When they grow fast, they are using the carbon. When we are looking at the carbon like this, they cannot in the valley. In the field, we are looking. We grow so much and we grow and we have meaning. When we are looking at the carbon like this, they cannot and we grow and we have meaning. we are looking at the couple like this. So that and we grow and then they have a age of that's what really so but they know what we are looking at the couple like this. So that and we grow and then they have a age of that's what really but they know what we are looking at the couple like this. So that and we grow and then they have a age of that's what really but they know what we are looking at the couple like this. So that and we grow and then they have but they know what we are looking at the couple like this. What we are looking at the couple like this. And we grow and then they have a age of that's what really we are looking at the couple like this. And we grow and then they have a age of that's what really we are looking at the couple like this. And we grow and then they have a age of that's what really we are looking at the couple like this. And we grow and then they have a age of that's what really we are looking at the couple like this. And we grow and then they have a age of that's what really we are looking at the couple like this. And we grow and then they have a age of that's what really we are looking at the couple like this. And we grow and then they have a age of that's what really we are looking at the couple like this. And we grow and then they have a age of that's what really we are looking at the couple like this. And we grow and then they have a age of that's what really we are looking at the couple like this. And we grow and then they have a age of that's what really we are looking at the couple like this. And we grow and then they have a age of that's what really we are looking at the couple like this. And we grow and then they have a age of that's what really we are looking at the couple like this. And we grow and then they have a age of that's what really we are looking at the couple like this. And we grow and then they have a age of that's what really we are loo
And which are recommended by the service. So as they tend the crops, they will also tend the trees. That means these communities are able to get, one, they will get food for their households. They will also be able to sell the surplus. In addition, we have got other benefits that accrue when the trees have been cut. At the time of logging, we have got those sections which are left, especially the stumps. The stumps are used by the forest adjacent communities, mainly for firewood. That would mean the delays in harvesting the mature plantations have got far-reaching implications on the livelihoods of the neighboring communities. Apart from that, when the plantations are being established, the forest adjacent communities get the opportunity to participate in the maintenance of these trees as they grow. Things such as pruning, for example. They are engaged by the service to prune the trees, and from the prunings, they can either get firewood for their households and so on and so forth. And also, of course, there are the wages that they get from there. So you can see that the establishment of plantations, once they have been harvested, means a lot to the communities that live around these areas. Apart from that, these are the people who bear the brunt of if anything was to happen, if anything wrong was to happen within the forest which are around them. These are the people who will feel the heat, and therefore they should also be allowed to enjoy some of these particular benefits. Last but not least, the forest adjacent communities are the first line of call. If there are fire disasters, for example, in the forests, they are the ones who are actually mobilized to assist the service even in fighting these fires. And therefore, they really need to continue benefiting from this particular resource. And they can only benefit once the trees have been harvested, they've been able to establish their farms, and so on and so forth. Right. For now, I will stop at that.
All right, thank you so much.
Good morning again. My name is James Kemondo from Carefree. And I would like to join with what they have said without repeating. But more to that, I think a question came up as to whether the president just decided to open the forest to lift the moratorium or not. I'd like to go into a bit of a history of what has gone on before we get to that point of lifting the moratorium. You know, the moratorium was put in place in February 2018. However, in April 2020, there was a very strong move to lift the ban from the manufacturers. And what they did is the ministry came up with a multi-agency team that was supposed to do the mapping, verification and evaluation of mature and over-mature plantations in the country. And this was a multi-agency team, which means KFS was one of them, but there were other people who were involved, including Carefree. They were supposed to look at the plantations where the sawmillers were saying that the plantations are over-mature, the material is getting rotten and all that. So this was supposed to be an independent group to look at what exactly existed in the field. And what was found is very interesting, is that we had approximately 26,000 hectares of plantation that were mature, that required urgent harvesting. Some of them were of good form, they were also good growth. Others had broken tops, they had started getting damaged. Others were heavily interfered with by game damage, through game damage, and others were being attacked by human beings. Now, that particular team made some few recommendations which are very, very interesting. They said there should be phased harvesting of the material that they found in the field. This is towards the end of 2020. There should be phased harvesting of the material to ensure that we do not harvest all that material at once, and then we have got so much material that the prices would drop. Then also number two, that they needed to start with the material that was heavily damaged, so that we stop further deterioration of that material and get it when it still has got value. And so in the end, this group made a recommendation that the 26,000 hectares of mature and over-mature plantations that were getting to that point of deterioration should be harvested in 5 years. That was their recommendation. And interesting enough, again, the government looked at the report and they adopted that report that the harvesting should be done within 5 years. And in that case, KFS was tasked to come up with 5,000 hectares that was supposed to be harvested immediately. Now, somebody asked what was going to be different. KFS was the same people who had been doing the same business, and now they are the same people now who are going to do this business. Yeah. And to change that narrative, again, the government came up with a multi-agency oversight team to oversee that disposal process. And that oversight team was backed by KEFRI to provide the technical backstopping, where they were supposed to look at the assessment, how the KFS was assessing the volumes, and how they were doing the variation. And that team, the KFS did their work, the oversight team also did its work. There were some few discrepancies, and eventually those discrepancies were aired out, and the 5 hectares were supposed now to be distributed. Now, KFS was also lucky in the multi-agency team. It was very interesting because we had even people coming from the public procurement team, agency, who were also supposed to guide in terms of how do you ensure that this material would go to the highest, the land now is well guided in terms of how this material is going to be distributed to ensure that all the actors are in place. I think for the time being, I would like to stop at that.
Thank you for that.
As I said, my name is Benjamin Mwanakunda, the chairman of the Forestry Society of Kenya. Now, the position of the Forestry Society of Kenya, which is a professional body that has people who profess forestry join it. We claim that our mandate is not just a claim, our mandate is professional forestry. Now, the ban and bans, that because they've been there many times, the Forest Society of Kenya has never found them useful. In 1974, Jomo Kenyatta banned charcoal burning in national forests. This happened, but it never sorted the problem. It never sorted the problem of charcoal in the country, because we, the Nyamachomas, eaters, we, the charcoal users, and there's a very large group, continue to demand charcoal. They never sorted out the problem. The problem still persists, in spite of what we call the charcoal harvesting rules. Now, come 1986, we banned forests exploitation in the natural forests. This also never worked. It partially did, in the sense that the national forests were ring-fenced, but it never quite worked. If anything, it made exploitation of forests go underground, because the demand for timber continued and still continues. Come 1988, people are told to move out of forests. Programs that were there over the years for planting trees and harvesting trees and sawmilling and exporting timber were damaged by that stroke of the pen of saying farmers move out of forests, sawmills move out of forests. Again, it never worked. All it did is to allow, again, demand timber and make life difficult, as has been said by those communities.
Right.
The most pernicious one, and the one that we're talking about, is the 2018. and which is the discussion today, we considered it the most pernicious. The most pernicious, the most evil. That one that was done in 1918. It involved that even private forests could not be felled. Community forests could not be felled. That's what the decision of 2018 did. And overnight, Mama Mboga, everybody who cooked with charcoal had to suffer. Timber shot up. We say that timber can come from Congo, it can come from Tanzania, it can come from Uganda. Of course, we had a lot of that timber coming. The damage has been mentioned here to your economy and to your joblessness and to your poverty. While you have the best in this country capacity to grow your own timber. It's been mentioned that you have 365 days of sunshine, 12 hours of sunshine every day. We know that you can grow timber, even in the Chalbi Desert in the water. Kenya is such a beautiful country not to import one iota of timber. So what we did is that we shot ourselves in the foot. And when this ban was lifted, we in the Forest Reserve of Kenya opened our champagne bottles. So, ladies and gentlemen, these champagne bottles we would like to actually give you because it's hallelujah. This ban for Forest Reserve of Kenya lifting is an extremely useful event, and we're going to discuss this further.
And I hope after the discussion, we will accept the champagne. All right. Let's also hear from.
Thank you, Purity. As I said, my name is Kaberia Kamenchu. I chair the timberwood and furniture sector at Association of Manufacturers. As Dr. Mugonda was saying, as KM, the lifting of the ban, we were very delighted. We're extremely happy with government. This is something we had been talking to government about for the last 4 or 5 years since the ban had been effected. Now, for us, when we look at it, the timberwood and furniture sector, we're looking at about 350,000 direct jobs for the country. In this, we have sawmillers who are primary processors, we have wood-based panel industry, and we have the furniture industry, both formal and informal, with a combined turnover of about $647 million, just shy of 100 billion Kenya shillings per year. Now, global furniture output in the world is $480 billion. For us, we need to increase. So in fact, moderator, for me, it's not about whether we're supporting the ban. It's about how much more can we do so that Kenya can get its rightful trading space, especially in the furniture market where we have a lot of African countries. South Africa sends a lot of its furniture to Europe, a lot of its furniture to the United States and the West. And this is something that we want to support local manufacturers to do. Now, even locally, as a country, we have a deficit of about 16.6 million cube of timber. We are unable to sustainably meet our own demand as a country, and that has been growing on and on with by 2030, we expect to be at about a shortfall of 25 million cubic meters. Now, do we need more trees? Absolutely. I just want to give some background that I'm aware of that Director Soy did not speak about. Now, the plantation forests that are being harvested right now did not come there by mistake. This is a World Bank study where they went into our state forests and looked at where are areas that are not conducive for natural forests. Over and above that, they looked at where can we site these plantation forests such that they act as a buffer against the indigenous forests being cut. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we're going to end with this, and we have to be very, very honest with ourselves, 80% of our primary energy in this country, and indeed the region, comes from fuel wood. Our primary source of energy comes from firewood. And we cannot run away from that fact. So we either have to find a way to sustainably manage it, or what will happen, as Dr. Mugunda has said, if you lock the forests, the firewood will still come out, because it is a need. It is not a want, it is a need. So I think I'll say more later, but yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. So I think I'll also welcome Benjamin and Michael and Magdalene to tell us why they feel, because when you look at why the ban was called for, we are talking about supporting livelihood. We are talking about utilizing these trees that have been there over time, and of course it's supporting the economy of the country. We have Timber Association. They are saying that, actually Kabere just said that we still have deficiency, okay? We still have high demand for timber, but we are not able, so we are still importing timber. And maybe that's why the president again increased the tax on importation of these materials. So why do you think that the lifting of the ban on logging has more disadvantages on the environment and the fight against climate change versus the pros that the other experts have said? Why do we still need to go back and reimpose the ban on logging? Let me start with you, Magdalene.
Okay, as I said, my name is Magdalene. I'm an environmentalist and students taking climate change and sustainability at Kenyatta University. Allowing people to get into the forest or to cut their own trees that they have grown, it is still okay, because we know that population is growing, we know that we are not economically stable, and maybe we are going to promote some people, or they are going to get some income generating being from the forest. But at the same time, I'm just looking at the way we do things here in Kenya. Okay, we have been known that we can get things, we can get discipline. Like you remember the time of Mishoki, when the issue of smoking was banned in public places. People are able to get it, and even now it's not very common to find someone smoking in the public. So I think if we allow people to get in the forest and do it sustainably, who is going to follow that? My fear is we allow it like 2 years, then we start complaining again. Last year we are saying that we have experienced drought that we have not experienced for the last 40 years. What is contributing to that? Our president did a very good thing. He was encouraging people to plant trees, and I thought that this could be the best step to take. But after some time, how long or how much are we careful? How are we going to take care of these trees until they get to maturity? We are in issues of climate change. Drought is coming. And these prolonged droughts, how sure are you that the trees we are planting now are going to support the environment, are going to mature, they are going to continue taking care of ecosystem? We are losing water catchment areas. When you allow people to cut trees, through corruption, you hear people talk of we are cutting trees which have been allowed by maybe the government. But you realize that people still, they get in the forest, they cut the trees which are not even the ones which are supposed to be cut. The issue of illegal logging has been there, even the time we had not allowed people to get to the forest. So I'm just imagining that this time it will become worse. People just get to the forest and they will target indigenous trees. Indigenous trees, they have been known to be very strong and they are expensive. So these people doing business, they will not only cut what is allowed, but they will get into the indigenous trees. And because they are playing a very important and great role in terms of ecosystem, we may not help ourselves. We are trying to solve issues of economy, we are trying to help people get in the forest, do something to for their earning, but at the end of it all, you realize that we are not doing it the way it's supposed to be done. My fear is corruption. How sure are we that we are going to cut what is allowed? How sure are we that we are going to cut and plant those trees until they get to maturity and start providing the ecosystem benefits? We have been having malforest has been an issue for a long time, and everybody knows, using common sense, malforest has been playing a very great role in terms of protecting our water catchment area, and see what happens. Professor has talked of a historical thing, how we have been burning and unburning forest, and this one has been as an issue of not getting what we intended to get. We have been struggling to improve soils. We have heard of Madenge is coming in, but years later, what is happening with Madenge and the community around Madenge? We have heard of Opute in Laikipia County. How is it responding nowadays? And we brought it to uplift or to improve soils. But later on, we realized this is not the best fish, this is not the best plant to improve our soils. All this has come as a result of trying to improve the environment which was destroyed many years ago. Eucalyptus of Tia Madenge has been introduced in 1990s. This is 2000, we are crying. Livestock, wildlife, and things like that. Last year, the droughts, I had the KWS were feeding wildlife. My question is, when these droughts come, we know forest is going to help in trying to mitigate this drought. So if we allow people to get to the forest, are they going to cut what is allowed? Are they going to get into the indigenous trees? They take so long time to mature. So when you get to them, it means that we don't know how much time you're going to wait for these seedlings. The biotechnologies are doing a very good thing to come up with a certain maybe species that will be able to grow fast without being affected by climate change, droughts, and things like that.
All right.
So I'll stop there, but the issue is corruption. That is my fear, and we may not achieve their targets. We might not achieve the objective that we are setting to.
All right, thank you so much for that. And of course, he will be telling us how the government will achieve the 15 billion target versus cutting down of trees, making use of the indigenous or older trees in the forest. Before I come to you, Michael, we have Professor Kiyukia who is joining us online. He's now ready to speak to us. Maybe, Prof, I can welcome you to give us your remarks on the impact of the lifting of this ban.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I have listened to the previous speakers on the banning of the ban of the forest. As an environmentalist, I feel that one thing the people that was put in place 6 years back, there has been a recovery of about 3% of forest cover. I know we have to think about the communities living around the forest and everything else, but the future is much more important than the present. It's only a few years back when Mara River had dried up. These days, you watch at some river that used to be big rivers like Chania River, Vika River, Sagana River, they are streams. The reason is that the people who are supposed to conserve our indigenous forests are not doing it. And when we allow the commercial logging, these people, they look at the business. For them, it's business. They don't care about the environment because they are not educated about the environment. They don't care. And so they go and cut the trees that are even not allowed to be cut. And the foresters will look aside. They will not even watch what they are doing. I remember the previous years was Puerto Rico. He had recommended the removal of the forest officers, especially around Nairobi. There was also a task force that presented him a report and incriminated a lot of people who are supposed to conserve our forests. Yet, I don't know, they were supposed to be prosecuted, but they were not. I guess I have not seen any report about that. So, opening the forest at this particular time, ladies and gentlemen, is detrimental to our country. It's detrimental. detrimental to our environment. For the last 6 years, the people, the farmers have planted trees, all different types of trees, and they have been sustaining the timber. They have been sustaining the timber, the required timber. I know we need timber, yes, and we import a little bit of timber. But can we also look around for a different type of, what can we use instead of timber? Must we use timber every time? If the forest gets finished, because we are not planting trees as required, what will be next? What will come next? Are we going to do?
All right, thank you so much.
We are asked to plant trees, we don't. Now that we open the forest, so the farmers who are planting forests in their farms, planting trees in their farms, for sale in 2 or 3 or 4 years, they stop doing that because of no big profit.
All right, Prof. Thank you so much for that. And I knew you would say that he wants to respond because Prof is asking, must we use timber? Anyway, let's first hear from Michael. Let's give him a chance to also tell us what he thinks about this issue of lift on ban on logging.
Thanks very much for this opportunity. Once again, my name is Michael Babu. Now, I would like to, first of all, focus on what were the drivers of this ban. What were the drivers of this ban 6 years ago? The drivers of this ban came as a result of public outcry, especially on the Mau water catchment. The rivers flowing from Mau had really depleted, and the communities downstream were crying louder than those who were living next to the Mau forest. Now, this one now, it also came to affect other forests like Cherengani Hills, Mount Elgon, Abadeas, and even Mount Kenya. Now, my question is, I want to give you some few questions that maybe we need to ponder about. In the migration and settlement of the communities in Africa, in Kenya specifically, each and every community had a socio-economic activities that they were well versed with at that particular time. What has changed? That now every community wants to go to the forest. It is because we destroyed our forests, the rivers are not able to flow as it was required in the past. Why are people fighting at the Tana Delta, year in, year out? It is because the Tana Delta becomes the lowest point where the water pools at difficult times, and everybody goes there for their livestock. So, when we look at this forest, whether government gazetted forest or indigenous forests, those areas, I still treat them as common pool resources. They are for the good of everybody in this particular country. So if farmers can be able to plant trees and harvest them for the need, and it is very clear, the areas that the farmers possess as compared to areas that we have the forest cover is much more larger than the areas that we need to conserve as our forest. Why can't we encourage the farmers much more to have this forest, including the areas where the guy was saying in Chalbi Desert, where forests can grow? The reason why we cannot have forests in Chalbi Desert, there is no water. Where is the source of the water? The water towers. But now, because we need timber, we are concentrating in going to the water towers, the areas we call gazetted forest. Whether they're gazetted, they still remain common pool resources for this particular country. If we go into this forest and cut these trees, there is something called breast diameter height. Maybe the foresters know it. Yes, that one. There is a level that you guys need to attain so that you can be able to harvest these trees. And it takes a number of, it's quite some substantial part of the year, maybe minimum 5 years. But I wonder if you can get a tree at 5 years that you can harvest for timber. Serious timber, 5 years only. Maybe firewood. Look at that particular perspective. Let us not put years, then we say after 5 years we have timber. It's not realistic. I've planted trees. Some of them, if I look at a tree I've planted which has taken 10 years, I look at it, depending on the geographical location of that particular place, you may not achieve what you are expecting. So versus this, let us look at the mortality of these trees, the growth rate of these trees, before we go into this particular forest. The communities that we say that can be able to venture into the forest so that they can earn a livelihood, the moment they destroy the forest, even that smallest ecosystem in their neighborhood where they grow crops, they'll not be able to get it. That microclimate that they use for growing the trees in that neighborhood, they will not be able to get it. So we may need to encourage these particular communities to ensure that these are done in a sustainable manner. Now, these questions, the task force we had that brought about, that was constituted after the ban 6 years ago, what were their recommendations? What were their recommendations? One is that KFS mismanaged our resources under their watch. That is why people could fly over Mau. At the roadside, you see thick forests, but inside is hollow. The trees were being cut indiscriminately. The task force recommended a complete overhaul of the forest management unit and bring in best practices for the management of our forest.
Right.
Has this been done? Changes in the using of the logging licenses. Maybe if it has been done, to what level? That now we have rubbished all the task force recommendations, we are coming back into our systems with logging of these trees.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we've heard from both sides on why, and the arguments are very strong, honestly, if you listen, that now we're looking at livelihood. We're looking at people that earn a living from the forest using timber. We have the representatives here who wanted to respond immediately to Professor Kiuk here, and also Mr. Soy who also wanted to respond. But again, we are looking at forest conservation. Okay, let's look at where we are coming from. Why was the ban imposed? As Michael is saying, there was an outcry, yeah, and Prof has also mentioned, because I want to pose this question to this side before I confirm from this, the CEO if we are taking a break first or we are continuing with the conversation. But again, the forest cover, he said, I think I wrote, there has been a recovery of forest by 3%. So since the ban was imposed in 2018, so what happens if now we lift the ban? How do we take care of the environment? Do we do another round or do we take a break?
Thank you, the host. We can take the break, 15
Yes.
minutes break.
Yeah.
Then we will do another round guided by the topics that are listed there. And then finally on that note, we also have the online members. They are sharing their comments, and their comments are critical. Maybe we'll get a chance to read some of them.
Absolutely.
So that we can be able to do the same thing.
Yeah, we'll also do that. So when we come, we also look at the solutions. As much as you're saying that, no, we need to reimpose the ban, what happens to communities that depend on this for their livelihood? Again, if we want to support communities, how do we do it in a way that we are not, again, depleting the forest and also destroying the water catchment areas that we have? So those are the solutions we are seeking for. For our audience, we'll also welcome the questions. So I think the online team, you can also share in your questions. We'll be going through them. Let's take the break.
Good.
Wanasema wanaisikia sauti. So tuache tu. Wanasema wanaisikia.
Sasa nikikupatia hili, ungekuwa unapata clean feed sasa kutoka kwa mama.
Oh, basi tuweke.
Weka tu. Alafu sijui hizi vitu tutafanyaje juu hatupati shoti hiyo tabia ya kushinda kusongesha ma VIP songa it's a bad man. So I don't know when tutafanya ama tuweze zivuta nyuma juu ya meza.
Hatuna Joyce.
Seta boy. Leta kebo yako moja.
Hizi vitu zinatumika kweli? Hizi kuna watu?
Sasa tukiruka tuweka hapo Oscar.
Leta kebo yako. Yenye imeingia hapa. Uko na kebo yenye inaweza ingia hapa. Imeenda.
Hii ndio inatoka kwa mixer.
Inatoka kwa mixer. Lakini haijakuwa ikikupatia chochote, si ndio? So what we do unakuja
unakujaje huko?
Sina. Sotoe huko.
Uichomoe huko uingize hapo.
Hebu Oscar toa.
Nikikuwekea utasikia tofauti.
Nitaona difference.
Sisi tulishoa zoea na kuja umejipanga tu kijeshi na assume it's the worst.
Although my problem was upate tu hiyo sound. Sasa cause nileka hiyo ndio maana nilikuwa na kusimu na kuniuliza sana. Kwa sababu kutaka pressure. Hiyo yetu inapita huko. Ni ile nimeweka kwa output ya monitor ya
Ayezi?
Nipini.
Uoni jack?
Nipini.
Sasa wewe hata tuweze kusaidia, wachana tu nayo. Juu sasa hii ni angalia, hii ni XLR, si unaona? Ni male female. Sina nini jack to XLR.
Wachana tu nayo.
Sasa kwa kwambia. Unajua bahati yenu ni ati nenda live hakuna editor ya kuangalia. For TV hata mimi naenda kupigwa msomo. That's a fact.
Oscar, wachana tu nayo. Mi muhimu kama wanaisikia. Kama wanaisikia.
Bora si wanaona picha, wanasikia. Leo pamoja. Hata hizo sasa ni sisi. Sasa ndio umeweka 6 degree na tumeweka mpaka 2. Sio mkesho hizi.
But niko na light.
Gani mtoshana?
Red.
Ungejua ujui leo.
Kwa nini? Nimeibeba iko hapo.
Unaona ukiweka headlight uchoka sport.
Una bounce.
Na hiyo distance.
Ungejua sijui.
Ni kuzimia ama ni watch on?
Acha on tu. Itakata battery.
Nikizima? Zitano. Oh, backlight.
Nakam.
that is our umbrella board. Yes, Robert.
No, it's okay.
So, you mentioned
But you see, the Lebanon there, the Lebanon is really covered by massive forest plantation.
yes, the ban affected the plantation forest.
So they are not going into the forest, yes, because this government has the forest, that they need allow them to go to the forest. But now, when a government plantation forest has a ban that there's no logging inside, what business do you have to go there as a logger?
No, so they need to do it. So we just seen how the town was really but now, when we went
It means
there,
illegal activities within this forest plantation forest was really
no, because there was legal logging before the ban.
before the ban,
Yes.
which was not done sustainably. It was not being done sustainably.
Because the trees that had been planted were like some of the trees that were ripe for harvest. They were rotting after the ban.
So it's very easy to catch this to find out what was happening. Simply go to those areas that had the logging before the ban and check out when the logging was done, was there replacement and how old are those trees? You will never find. You will find them open spaces with maybe grass.
We went there. They watched us planting.
But did you purchase inside?
No matter what, eat first.
Again. But you see, what we are saying,
I'm charged now. Thanks for the coffee. Thanks for the coffee.
You're welcome.
Very good.
I think we need to continue. Right, I think we are ready to continue with our discussion. On this session, we don't want to take so much time because we've already heard from the experts. We already know the consequences of logging. And when I talk about consequences, I mean the benefits it has to our economy, and the consequences, again, it might have, if done inappropriately, to our ecosystem and biodiversity. I just want to welcome again our panelists for, do I say, a rebuttal, a right of reply, but let's ensure that we don't repeat what the other person has said, for instance. But the most important, yes, sir? Oh, you then, so I start with you. It's fine. No problem. So we've seen strong arguments and discussions which are really important for our country, and very important as far as making decisions on this important conversation on logging is concerned. We know that why the ban was imposed in the first place in 2018. There was an outcry that, you know, this logging is affecting the biodiversity, the tree cover in the country. And again, that decision to ban had consequences on the people that directly benefited from timber. So how do we strike a balance? That's what we are going to find out on this session. So for our panelists, please, you have 1.5 minutes only to respond to either questions that I'll be directing to you. But most importantly, I think I'll welcome Mr. Soy to speak first from the Kenya Forest Service. There have been a lot of concerns on how do you plan to do this. We know before the ban, the consequences we were experiencing, climate change and drought, which is what Professor was saying. Let's look at the future and not at the present. But if we are to strike a balance, please tell us what KFS and other state agencies are going to do to ensure that, yes, even if we are going to allow communities to benefit from this, then this is what we are going to do different from what you've done in the past, so that we again protect our forest cover. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Let me say first, we start from the present as we go to the future. First thing, my sister here asked, what action are we going to take to ensure that we are not going to destroy the forest again? First, let me inform my sister, what we are doing is in plantation. We are not talking about the catchment area. There's nobody who is cutting trees on the catchment area. The strategies are this. Right now, we have employed 300 rangers who are undergoing training in Kilgate now. You are the president is giving us, instructing us to employ 3,000, not 300, 3,000 rangers, I'm sorry, which are undergoing training in Kilgate, and plus the 22,300 rangers who are here. We'll distribute them along the forest, especially the critical areas. Right now, we have employed 165 foresters, which we have deployed all over, especially in the nurseries, to be in charge of seedling production for planting. In 2 weeks' time, we'll be recruiting another 300 foresters, which will be also be deployed. We are also working with the CFS to ensure that our forest is intact. We are working with the sawmillers. We are working with the national government and the county governments. And you have seen that that will be recruiting Green Army, which will also assist in the management of forest in planting and raising seedlings. My brother here talked about Mao, the destruction of Mao. The destruction of Mao was not because of the plantation. Our content here, let us be clear, we are talking about the lifting of plantation. The Mao was a problem of excision and illegal settlement, which we the foresters, we were against it. My brother talked about the DPH. The DPH means the army that's please right. And this are management rule where we have to thin the trees, not only for commercial purposes, but for management purposes, in case of fires or other thing in the plantation. And with the first thing we did, we are doing it 5 years, second 10 years, and then the third one, which is commercial, and the other is at 15 years. But we are looking for the selected trees, which are the dead, the dying, so that we keep a very achievable plantation. The last one, let me tell my brother, professor, that we are not illiterate. We have got foresters who are doctors. That we have got sawmillers who are doctors. And we went to school, we have science like other people. And you said we should be jailed. People are jailed when we have enough evidence to take them to court. And if you have it, welcome.
All right. And Kaberia, I know there was also a question on must we work with timber? Can we have an alternative to this? Probably you can respond to how that is important, and as you advocate for the industry, manufacturing industry, how best can we make use of the timber, the trees that we have, as well as preserving the environment and conserving these important trees and forests that we have?
Thank you, Purity. Before I get to the answer to my question, first I'll address, I think, Professor. And Professor, I think you're being, with all due respect, extremely sensationalist. And also telling you, Mr. Babu, why did the ban happen in 2018? It's because of such sensationalism that is not grounded in fact, it's not grounded in science, it is magic pulled out of the air. And let me just give an example. Now, Professor says that Mount Kenya is drying up because we are cutting trees. Now, you know, at times, I don't understand. Maybe let me educate you, Professor. Climate change is about emission of greenhouse gases that trap the sun's heat, all right? Everyone knows that Mount Kenya's glaciers are receding. Those glaciers are what form the large chunks of water that come all the way down till the Waso Nyiro. Now, add on to the fact that we have, and Kenya Water Towers picked this up, that I'm not speaking about specifically Mount Kenya, that upstream we have farmers who illegally tap water, thus denying users downstream water. Now, we can talk about climate change. Now, we have to understand there's so many things that cause these emissions. Right now, the building we're sitting in, the cement, the vehicles that we drove in, all right, the AC we're using, the power generated in our homes, all those cause greenhouse gases. Now, the only thing that trees assist in is trees store the carbon. Now, we are telling you that this tree has a lifespan. This exotic tree, this cypress tree, this pine tree, this eucalyptus tree. Now, if you don't cut it at a certain lifespan, it will die. And once it's dead, it will still release the same carbon as if it were cut. So I really struggle to understand what do you want us to do? If we let the tree die, the carbon is removed. If we harvest the tree and use it sustainably for the country and create employment, the carbon is removed sustainably. So I want us to have a very sober discussion, devoid of emotion and devoid of sensationalism, because it is this telling people down on the grassroots, unajua ukikata miti mvua inapotea. All right? The different ways of conservation, Mr. Babu. If you go right now to Chalbi Desert, and I dare you, fence 100 acres, just fence it, watch it regenerate, watch a forest come up. That is science. Thank you.
All right, Kaberia, thank you so much for your remarks. But again, I'll ask you this as a food for thought, which I request Prof to respond. We have so many things that are emitting carbon. Trees help us take in the carbon.
Yes.
Yeah, they're taking the carbon, they give us the oxygen, so it's part of the process, and that's why even the president is saying that we want to plant more trees, one, to preserve the environment, the forest cover, but at the same time, it's part of the process of addressing climate change.
Yes.
So I'm not sure whether we are to cut trees just because we haven't addressed other problems, such as cement use.
No, that's not.
Yeah,
that's,
all right.
That's not my point. Those
so,
are two totally different things.
All right, so let me welcome Prof. I'll get back to you. Michael and Magdalene. But Prof, there's something very interesting that you mentioned, which is very true, that we have so many people that rely on charcoal use and firewood in the country. Let's look at the negative impact of this. Yeah, we know charcoal use, emission of carbon, which we're trying to fight globally, not even as a country, globally, reducing the carbon emission. But now, is it okay to encourage and say, let's support these communities that are really depending on charcoal and firewood? Or is it best to look at the consequences that this action has and probably get an alternative? That's my question to you.
Now, the charcoal and firewood issues. Yes. You are rightly saying that they could be pernicious to health. But the facts are that for this generation, and the next generation, and the third one, the projections are that we will still need firewood and charcoal. That is the prediction. And in spite of what we are doing, in spite of the gases and the electricity and burners that we want and desire, this generation and the next generation, we will need firewood and charcoal. That's a fact. So the answer is to provide for it. As we grow, as we get people developed, that's what I would want to say for now, that it's inevitable. So we should provide for that. Now, what I wanted to say other than that is that forestry science is a very old science, and it must be respected, the forestry science. Just as we respect doctors, just as we respect engineers, just as we respect any profession, forestry must be respected. Its Hippocratic oath is sustained forest management, SFM. From day one as an undergraduate, that's what you're taught. that you don't eat tomorrow's jam. And that is what forestry is all about, that's what it is, and this is what it's going to be.
All right.
So please, at least give us the credits. As I told you, I was an undergraduate, left university at age 24, and that's what I was taught, and that's what I'm still being taught from University of Ibadan. But forget about me now, let others, talk.
All right, thank you so much. James, of course, I welcome your remarks. I know you have a rebuttal. I'm going to give you time to do that, but on top of that, please, as Kefri, tell us the best way, because at the end of the day, I believe that, like Prof is saying, forestry science has been there, and environmentalists, it's to protect the environment, and that includes the forest cover, all right? So what are you going to do different, really? We don't want to live in the past. We know what has happened in the past. We know Kenyans were allowed to get into the forest, and saying that, no, the rate at which we are destroying our catchment areas, the rate at which that we are looking at this and ending drought, then we need to do something. Right? So what different are you going to do so that we can now get into this phase of allowing logging and knowing that as a country we also have a benefit for both the livelihood economy and our conservation of the forest?
Thank you, Purity, for that. And before I get to that, I would like to talk about just a second about Shako. One, we have to ask ourselves, what alternatives do we have for Shako? Among the communities we have, actually almost none. They have to either use firewood or charcoal. That being the case, then, we have to look at charcoal as a business. One, we have to start growing plantations purposely to produce charcoal. That is key, because that would mean that people would stop looking at the natural forest as areas where they are going to get their own, the material for making charcoal. That is number one. Number two, we have to improve the conversion of wood into charcoal. Right now, the traditional way, we get about 15%. That is very low, meaning 18% of the wood is released into the atmosphere as carbon. Now we have to improve that by looking at better kilns, charcoal making kilns, which can go even up to 45. You can imagine if you go up to 45% recovery, that would mean we only use a third of the wood that we have been using before. That is quite an improvement. Number three on the same is we have to start thinking about going hand in hand with the charcoal and also the cook stoves that we have. We have to think about what cook stoves can we use that can use less energy, less wood or less charcoal, at the same time give us the same amount of energy for our cooking and warming the house. Having said that, we now have to look at that in terms of improving the wood cover in the field. If we look at those two components, that is making charcoal business as a business, where tree growing in the field becomes recognized as a business, it means having my own piece of land, I would put it on a charcoal tree species, for example, eucalypts, so that maybe after 5 years, I can convert them into charcoal and get a return. We have got a company, they're doing it very well. Now, to go hand in hand, I see the ban as an area that we have to be very, very careful, and I think everybody has put it rightly, that there is a lot of sensitization, a lot of emotions into this, where we say, we are not getting rains because we are cutting trees. Look, the catchment, the water towers, we do not have plantations out there. Our plantations are in the lower side. So which means where we are harvesting should not have an impact on the water that is flowing out. So if we get the charcoal combined, becoming a business, it means even the production of wood would also become a business. And it means three farmers who are together, one side by side, one is growing wheat, another one is growing hay, another one is growing trees. The one with the maize and the hay will be harvesting 2 times a year. Am I correct? Yes. The one with the trees have to wait for 30 years before they can harvest. It is immoral that you let these two guys who have been growing maize and wheat and hay to be harvesting every year, nobody raises a finger. The person who has waited for 30 years want to harvest his trees after 30 years, and you say he's destroying the environment. It's immoral. because this is an investment. They have invested, they have been harvesting. The one with the trees is only harvesting after 30 years. And he's going to harvest, he's rational. He's going to harvest his trees, and then thereafter, he's going to plant. Which means this particular area is not at any one time going to be left. It's only the harvesting, and then you get a new crop. And the plantations we have in this country, they are cut and they are replanted. So which means at no time are they going to remain for so long. If management is done correctly, they are going to remain without trees. Right. That is very important for us to remember, that we need to encourage those people with great, tracts of land, that they should actually go into tree planting without having, environmentalists, that they are going to put a finger on them and say, hey, you cannot cut. It's an investment they have gone into. They may even have gone into investment in terms of better machinery, or so that they can even get a better recovery. They can even go into this integrated harvesting, where they have got the timber on one side, they have got the sawdust going into energy, and they have got maybe the tops going into power. Yeah. So all that, we need to look at that as a business.
All right. Thank you. And Chege, even as you give us your rebuttal, you earlier on said that people should be given an opportunity or allowed to enjoy what we have as a country, because we have some trees, indigenous trees that you cannot find anywhere else. But how can they enjoy while at the same time they're not interfering with the environment? How can we allow logging that does not again interfere with the environment? Because I'll also be engaging Dr. Kanye, who said that the reason as to why there was a ban is for the government to slow down the destruction. So that means there was a destruction. So how best can this, how can this be working? Allowing Kenyans to cut down, not cutting down, I mean, not use that language, but to make use of the trees that we have for timber and other reasons, but at the same time ensuring that we don't interfere with our ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Purity. I think I didn't mention indigenous forests, but I was referring to the forest adjacent communities who, after the plantations have been harvested, they are the ones, through the CFAs, who are engaged. They get the plots, they replant the trees that are required, and also they plant the food crops, such that as they tend the food crops, they also tend the seedlings. The enjoyment I was referring to is actually that fact. If the trees are not harvested, what we are calling logging, then they will miss out on that benefit of having to plant food crops. They will miss out on that enjoyment. And to add to that, when we look at the mature pine or the mature eucalyptus as it is, we need to work backwards and realize it started as a seed. It went to a seed bed, it became a seedling, and then it was planted at a particular time. And KFS, of course I don't speak for KFS, we have a person there. KFS makes use of the CFAs when it comes to re-establishment of the plantations. And that way, the communities benefit a lot. That is to say, the moment of harvesting must come at a particular time if these communities are going to continue enjoying the benefits of the fact that they live near the forests. So we need to see the entire cycle. From the moment the seed goes to the seedbed, it becomes a seedling, it is planted, it is taken care of until the point where it is harvested. Right. And that is where the communities really benefit. So by actually putting the brakes abruptly, as they were put, and preventing the harvesting, it means so many communities were pushed back. Apart from that, there is a lost time of re-establishing the plantations, and also now the lost benefits further to the people who are engaged in terms of the planting, the labor, and other silvicultural practices that are there of pruning and so on and so forth in the forest.
All right, thank you so much. And finally, Dr. Kani, if proper guidelines are not put in place, we are going to see, we are going to see more cutting or harvesting than planting of trees. So how do we ensure that this target by the government of 15 billion trees is achieved versus allowing people to harvest? How do we strike a balance?
Thank you very much. I will start from there. I must say that tree planting or plantation management is a precise management system. Before any plantation is established, there is a lot of background work that is done. The first one is, of course, to provide for the area. And the second thing is to survey that area. That area is surveyed. So the actual area or the plantation is precisely known. There is what we call in forest management a compartment register. Every plantation is registered. It has a book, which is in that book record every activity undertaken is recorded. And some of the activities, like even thinning, they have to be authorized by a very senior officer, not even a forester. Those days we used to call them district foresters. I think these days are called county foresters. So it is a structured management, just like any other commercial management. So there's minimal risk that anyone, unless somebody is destructive, whoever it is, goes out of that system. The system is well structured.
Right.
Second, let me quickly say, we are now focusing on about 150 or 120,000 hectares of forest, which is government forest. But outside here, from a study that was done in 2008, we got 4 million hectares of arable land available for forestry, without interfering with other crops. 4 million hectares. What are we doing about it? There is a lot of potential for private growers to undertake forestry, because we are talking about government forests opening of the moratorium or lifting of the moratorium because there is a demand for wood. But why don't we also encourage and incentivize investors to get it, like in other countries? I can assure you globally, I think Kenya is one of the very few countries where the government is the lead investor in plantation forestry. A lot of countries have divested that to investors, both local and international investors. If you go to South Africa, they have more than 2 million hectares of plantation. All that is owned by private companies, creating employment and job opportunities and opportunities for even advancement to many, many citizens. So we need to think about outside of the box. And you see, apart from lifting the moratorium, what next? We cannot keep on talking about moratorium for the next 1 year. What next? We must move forward. And we now should be encouraging even government to incentivize, create incentives for others to utilize available land. Because if you drive from here to Mombasa, there's a lot of open land, which is not crops. Some of them are ranches, huge ranches, and they are suitable because, again, technology is very important. We have brought in the technology of using hybrid cones of eucalyptus and other species like pines, which are now being tested. It's not just maize that you can hybridize or other crops. You can hybridize trees. And we are doing that so that we can advance, we can take forestry from the high potential areas where we are growing the coffee and tea and the indigenous forests that are protecting our water towers and move it to dry areas. And we have seen that happening in other countries like Brazil, where they have converted their savannas into thriving commercial forests. And that is what we must move away from forests in Mount Kenya and Abadeas and Cherangani and others, and think about areas that are not cropped, but using technology, we can be able to push forestry away from competitive land where we have conservation.
All right, and remember, Daktari, Brazil is among the top 3 countries struggling with illegal logging.
Absolutely.
Don't forget that.
Can I talk something about 15 million tree seedlings?
In
1 minute.
20 seconds.
This is actually very important to mention that actually KEFRI is at the lead in terms of realizing the jump pricing, or that is the seed, to realize the 15 billion tree seedlings that is supposed to be planted. This figure came from the fact that the last study that was done, we found that the country had 12.13% tree cover. And now with that percent, it means we required 17.87% of the land to be covered with trees. Now, working backwards and assuming that we know the size of the country, we realized that we required to afforestate 10.6 million hectares in the country for us to attain the 30%. And that is how we arrived at the amount that is the 15 billion seedling. So it was work backwards, and then we realized the figure. And actually, I would say the government has already facilitated KEFRI. We are building 18 tree seed centers to ensure that we distribute the seed throughout the country. This is work in progress. 8 of them are ready. They have started functioning, and the other 10 are also in progress. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think it's now Magdalene and Michael. Please tell us the solutions. I know we are saying no to logging, But what are the alternatives to families depending on, on this, on harvesting of trees? What are the alternatives of timber, for instance? What solutions do we give so that we don't just tell people do not harvest trees, but how do they earn a living? How do they make a living? What options do they have?
Thank you, Purity. Before I answer that, Kabiria, you mentioned about the cost, one of the causes of climate change. So climate change is not only caused as a result of cutting trees. What we are saying is that from 19th century industrial revolution, carbon dioxide has been rising, and we have seen that the globe is heating. The atmospheric temperature is increasing. So as a result of that, we have been experiencing droughts. So when we plant trees, when we encourage forests, it means that we shall be helping cooling of the earth, we shall be helping in attraction of rainfall, we shall be helping in protecting of ice caps and things like that, and we'll be creating environment for trees or for tree growing. So when we don't look at carbon as the main cause, actually it's a complicated thing. Carbon dioxide has got into the atmosphere, it has led to global warming, and as a result of that, climate change issues have come up. One of them is drought. Here in Kenya, we have experienced drought, and I'm sure that KWS will tell us, or KFS will tell us that we have lost a number of trees as a result of the previous drought. So sometimes we may want to plant trees, but as a result of that global issue of droughts, how are we going to support that? Which trees have been planted, and as a result of the previous droughts, they have not been able to get to maturity. So those are the global issues that we are not able to solve unless now we encourage forests that will help in the protection of the environment generally, help in rainfall attraction, and we'll be able to support even the trees we are going to plant.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. About the alternative, I think when the president was encouraging people to plant trees, and everybody was feeling like I can have a place where I can grow trees, and through things like co-picing, I can be getting source of energy like wood. Where I come from, I encourage some farmers, small-scale farmers, to grow indigenous trees. They are called mukau. I'm not sure of the botanic name of that. Yeah. Yes, and it's doing well. So during when they're about to plant trees, when they're about to do cropping, farming, they do co-picing. They cut branches and they are kept to dry, and they become source of firewood. They become source of energy. So in that case, you find that the tree plants or the trees themselves are there in their farms. At the same time, they're utilizing branches from those trees, and they're doing well. If you look at those places, I come from Bere. Bere is it's actually dry. You find those people who have planted those trees because indigenous trees, they're able to cope up with the climate, the environment. It is not it will not be a problem when it comes to drought. They're able to tolerate the drought, and they're doing well. Actually, most of them were not dried up during the previous drought, and they're doing well. If you look at the local climatic condition of those areas, they have improved. Actually, the rainfall would come and just rain just around those places, and they are doing well. So they are alternative source of energy. You encourage planting at the same time through things like co-picing. They're able to get a source of energy, not necessarily going to the forest or going to the harvesting areas. So Kaberia, we are not talking of cutting trees and climate change. Climate change has been there, it's a global issue. So we are encouraging the existence of forests so that continue reducing the amount of carbon accumulating in the atmosphere. We reduce the atmospheric temperature, and we shall discourage droughts. When discourage droughts, we shall also help in supporting of these trees we are planting now. Because if you plant trees now, in the next 2 years we have prolonged droughts, these trees just dry up. So we may end up not helping ourselves, and it is not our fault. Drought is a global problem.
All right, Michael, again, on top of what you're about to say, if we ban logging, what happens to these trees when they grow old and they have no use? What happens to them?
Once again, thank you very much for this opportunity. And I would like to borrow a lot from Dr. Kani, from Kefri. Now, I want to say that within the environment, whatever you do within the watershed, you do it either for the environment or against the environment. And what is a watershed? Even where we are is a watershed. So, regarding the 150,000 hectares that we are looking at for getting these resources that we want, that is actually logging to meet deforestation. These are government gazetted forests that we are looking at. Now, these government gazetted forests, they also include the indigenous forests, like the ones that we talked about in the issue of map. Now, looking at the land area within Kenya, why can't we leave these government gazetted forests and the indigenous forest to play their role within our ecosystem? Then we encourage Kenyans and incentives, like things like people like team sales. Those people used to have very large, vast land areas of wood for their productivity. The areas when you say travel along, when you go to Mombasa, those areas that have ranches, why can't we focus those areas so that we have those areas to feed these people that need the wood for their economic activity? Now, these indigenous forests that we have, these little ones that we have, these forests will still play a major role for the current existing generation and the upcoming generation, so that we don't need to touch this by all means. The reason why you are saying that if the trees within particular forest, when they die and rot, the trees are carbon. When they die, they also play a major role within the ecosystem. They create the humus component of the forest for other trees to grow. When they grow older also, they produce their own seedlings and seeds for their recreation of this particular forest. So the idea that when the trees grow old and die, so that we need to really move very fast before they die, I don't think it may not be adding value for us.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And of course, that brings us to the end of our conversation. Before we wrap it up, we want to have a look at some of the comments from online, and maybe we'll also get one or two comments from the audience. Do we start with the online? All right.
Okay, thank you, the moderator. I'll be able to read some of the comments from the Zoom platform. Then questions here will read the one from the YouTube. The first one is a lot of the participants agree with our discussion here, and I'll pick this one. Good presentation by the young lady. I believe that is Gendo. Her concern are genuine enough on how the structures that oversee harvesting of the aged plantation have improved. Unfortunately, they are the same officers under KFS, and we haven't seen any new regulations that will help to do things differently. These are the genuine concerns that need answers. Somebody has mentioned, that's the second one from Simon Jonge. Somebody has mentioned Mabenge problem as a source of charcoal. Well, Mabenge has been a viable alternative source of charcoal on commercial scale from assets. Unfortunately, its use was abused by those making charcoal by cutting down indigenous trees. CS Tobigo tried to develop a safeguard protocol document that would address this abuse. The protocol introduced several layers of supervision and oversight at the community level. It gave more responsibility and accountability to the charcoal producer associations, elders, KFS, KFE, county governments, and other related institutions. Unfortunately, the protocol was not piloted, but exists, and it can be revived and put into life. Another comment, our government does not give professionals to provide guidance on the best practices of management of forests in Kenya. As a professional, I would advise that before the ban was lifted, as we now see here, the following could have been done. 1, revision of the management plans of the existing plantations. 2, zoning plantations and giving more responsibility to managers to to oversee specific zones of, say, 500 hectares per manager. The manager is given the revived management plan and must not be transferred for a period of less than 5 years. This will help to plan better under the performance contracting plan. Another one is our biggest challenge is politicizing very critical issues. Sweden supplied a significant percentage of the timber for Europe. At the same time, it has offered 50% forest cover. So our biggest challenge is defining what sustainable forest management practices can work for us and finding best implementation strategies. Another one here is forest plantation must not be left to the government alone, but concessions by the private sector should be encouraged. I think that was a point from Dr. Kaliga. The other one is a law should also be enacted that spells out the minimum proportion of counties that must be under the forest cover. Those are the comments from the Zoom platform. Maybe you can pick a few from YouTube Live so that you can take the program back to the host, to the moderator.
Okay, on YouTube there are very many comments, so I'll pick some are repetitive. Gerard says true forests are not does not only serve the immediate people, it serves as a lifeline, and the whole community depends on the services. And then Moses Pololo says, do we have the capacity to keep our forests healthy and resilient? The ban should have been lifted after attaining a certain threshold of forest cover. What is the rush? Kabe Joseph says, I strongly stand against this ban for it to bring down many forests which are serving as carbon sequesters. We should look at the long-term impact of the this forest logging. Say no more. Someone else says the lifting of the logging ban could open doors to abuses that deepen the problem of climate change, meaning an attempt to fix short-term economic problems could cause long-term pain. There are some comments directed to the CAM representative. It says we should never profit over people and nature. Nature is really unforgiving. Livelihood is important. Nature provides for everyone. Not everyone agreed. It's not so clear. And then there's a question to the CAM guy. Kindly provide data for the other ecosystem services apart from timber and furniture. I have no problem with plantations, but one should not touch indigenous forests. Those ones should be left alone for our own benefit and prosperity. And then Puritan Jerry says, create incentives for plantation establishments. She also adds South Africa best practice gives a good perspective into commercial forestry. Gerance again says also focus on other ecosystem services like honey recreation, education, and cultural enrichment. Mr. Mugabe says, from this conversation, the forestry sector needs serious investments in the following areas: seed production, plantation investment, forest products, biodiversity, and serious protection investments. He adds that further we need to fully commercialize and control forest systems and diversity.
Right, I think those are strong comments from our online viewers, and you can clearly see that they were following this conversation very keenly. I want to welcome just 2 comments from the audience present here. And I'm a bit gender sensitive, so let's have a male and female. Anyone from the audience? Yes, please.
My name is Charles Buju. I work for the Kenya Forest Service. Now, there are some. We are just coming from the field with a team of people in communication and journalists, and we are looking at plantations. And the concern on the ground is that a lot of the decisions are being taken in hotels, in hotel groups that touch on the ground. But few people are listening to what the ground is saying, or the realities of the ground. So it would be good that we also get to the ground and have these conversations, so that when you say we should not cut plantation trees, then you are being able to relate with what is happening. There's opportunity for expansion of trees like you had today, and the spaces are available, and it's possible to increase tree cover to 30% by 2032. But as long as we don't get to the ground, then we still have severe gaps. Another thing that we noted was that there is a lot of misconception around plantation forestry, and these forums are good because they are opening up the space for discussion and for accurate information to flow. There was also the question of when it comes to plantation forestry harvesting, when there is planting going on, when the management of the plantation is going on, the civil cultural operations are going on, there is normally no support or multi-agency interventions or the concerns that we're hearing now. But as long as you say the word harvesting, then it becomes the interest of it and still have a voice about it. So there's need for the actual acceptance that plantation forestry is a key intervention for first preventing the erosion of our foreign currency, because if we're importing money, trees, then we are paying through the dollar, which is really unnecessary.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. A lady? Yes.
So my questions would be focused to KFF. Maybe you already covered this a little bit, but I would like you to clarify on one, how are you planning to ensure there's no abuse of this lifting the moratorium and ensure that the indigenous forests are protected, and even for the plantation, only the mature plantations are harvested. And in our last conference, the presenter from KFS told us there's now you have a very elaborate database of the forests, and like it's real time. You can monitor what happens real time. So how is that data being used now to monitor the forest and to ensure that we are not deforesting our country? And number two would be, are there any measures that have been taken to educate these communities that thrive on logging? Are they educated on when should you harvest? Because at the end of the day, as a local in having a plantation, if I decide now I want to cut my trees and do firewood, to use them for firewood or sell them, then I might not understand why the government would want to stop me. So has there been any effort to educate the communities on best practices?
Right. Maybe you can take a minute to respond.
Okay. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you very much, madam. In harvesting, we cannot harvest abundantly. We have got what we call failing plant. That is why when I started, I said we have got 152,790 hectares, and our allowable cut, meaning what are we allowed to cut is 5,000 hectares per year in the country, distributed all over the plantation. And then the target, the planting target is the same 5,000 hectares. And I told him the rotation age is 30 years. So if you divide 5,000 into 150,000, it will be 30 years. When we'll be cutting the last tree, the other trees will be 30 years. This thing is not abuse. I say we have employed more foresters and more foresters. Each forester is in charge of one station. It is like a principal in a college who is taking care of the children. So if anything happens, he will face the consequences. There are other places which they abuse, and now we have some officers who have been put in addiction because of the abuse. are working with other multi-agencies. By the way, foresters are members of regional, national, up to county security. They are attending the security meeting. So should any problem, they work with other security agencies. And also we are working with the community. In fact, community they give us a lot of information, intelligent information. Every day we get intelligent information from the community. About the logging maybe in plantation or outside the plantation, we have what we call capacity building. We normally work with the carefree, we work with Ministry of Agriculture, we work with county government, with training for the important trees. And also, according to my experience, no farm is able to do any person. They normally say when they have a specific problem. And they normally, most of them now, they come to us to carry information from them so that they are not being taken off by programs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Only one question.
All right.
Here, my friend, sorry. The road to 15 billion trees, how will we keep track of attaining that 15 tree cap by the year 2032? Like, how will we be getting the information? Should it be on a yearly basis or after every 5 years, something like that, so that we will know that where we are in terms of achieving that?
First of all, I think that one Mr. Kimondo will ask. We have an app developed by Kenya Forests, the Kivri Research Institute, whereby when you plant a tree, you put it in the habit. It's an application you afford. When you just inside, and then it will be recorded automatically. Just submit the app. I think Mr. Kimondo will show you on how to work on it. And also, we have got daily report. We have got an app in our KFS, where we normally report. We report the daily activities which is taking place, even if it is one tree, even if it is planted by a farmer. And then we compile and we keep the database in the Forest Information Center. We are talking about also the monitoring. We have got survey 1, 2, 3, which can give information up to date. In 5 seconds, if I go back 5 seconds, I can get information. Now we are practicing in Wale, Kilifi, and it is taking place in Baringo.
All right. There's a burning issue here.
Thanks, Bernard.
Wonderful presentation. My name is Dr. Karim Baswiti from EIK. Why we had the moratorium, as there was a driver, and the driver of the moratorium was degradation. And this degradation was caused by an insatiable appetite of forest harvesting. And the money does not honor the demand curve in economics. The desire for money, nobody is, there's no enough money. So, it brings in the issue of ethics, and ethics in the Kenyan context. Kenyans lack ethics. Ethics in utilizing the natural resources. We are a human-centered community. If we are given a resource, the outcome is destruction because of greed. Unless the forest department has what policies after lifting of moratorium, we are expecting to get the degradation of this forest in a few years to come, and we are expecting to get another moratorium. So, Kenyans need to change their mind on how to deal with natural resources, especially the transboundary resources, where forest is one of them in ecological perspectives. the businessmen, we wonder why the businessmen are not planting trees, not owning their plantations. They are depending on government initiatives to harvest trees. If you ask these businessmen, show us your plantations, they will not show us. They are busy taking loans to buy so many baguasos, targeting government investment, government plantations. Why can't we give incentives to these businessmen to utilize the private properties in investing in plantation forestry, other than depending on government initiatives? Unless we change these businessmen, unless they change their perception, not the one to the bank taking 10 million to buy a sawmill where you have not invested in planting trees. In a business model, you have to have a source of raw material, and you have to invest on your own trees to harvest. Finally, is the code of ethics in tree harvesting. Code of ethics, we are writing that code of ethics, especially we need that code of ethics in tree harvesting. And finally, we are talking about communities around that forest areas. The indigenous communities add knowledge, add moral obligations, moral perspectives, beliefs, and attitudes concerning those forests, where they were balancing nature with the economic benefits of that forest. But with increased population, movement of people, so this balance, the indigenous knowledge has been compromised, and we are driven by the economic perspectives. And finally, what we need is the ecological concerns need to be combined with economic realities so that we can have a balanced benefits from the natural resources, economic perspective and ecological perspectives.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Before I wind up, allow me to say final words for my viewers also. I have some. So which camera? All right. And that brings us to the end of our conversation this hour. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Purity Museanzuki. Keep watching KTN News. Right, and we can't have enough of this. I think this is a challenge to EIK to organize another one. I mean, that brings us to the end of our conversation. But of course, from the EIK team, we need so I need to read this. The dates. All right. And this is an announcement from the Environment Institute of Kenya. It has the pleasure to welcome all of you to the second EIK National Environment Conference and Exhibition 2023 and this will be from October 25th to October 26th in Mombasa. So I think we have time to do our bookings and all that, because we cannot have enough conversations about climate change and environment conservation. And it's important, as even the audience has said, that people are not so much aware on the benefits of this banning, lifting on ban, or even banning on logging. So there needs to be so much awareness on this. And I want to thank EIK for also engaging the media, because media is also another way that people get to relay the message and learn about some of these issues. Yes, sometimes these issues are sensationalized, so that we are banning it, we are saying, yes, we are on the road to fighting climate change, but maybe that's not the case. Or even lift a ban when there are future consequences. So let's keep on making the awareness, and I even encourage our panelists here, once you're called, because that's the challenge we usually have in the newsroom, once you called for these conversations, please don't be too busy on the field. Also come on the studios and make this awareness to the general public. Thank you so much once again. My name is Purity Museo. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with you all.
Great, thank you, our moderator, for taking us through that wonderful session. We are coming to the close of our consultative meeting, but before we do that, we'll be having the key outcomes that have come from this discussion of ours, as well as any kind of arguments that we need to forge together as institutions that are represented here. The next steps, as well as the future engagements going forward, the way our moderator from the KTN has indicated, that we need to continue with this conversation, and not only in the hotel rooms, but also we should go to the media stations, as well as go to the ground there. At this juncture, I would invite Dr. Fatuma Daudi to give us the key outcomes, then we close the session from there. Thank
you very much. Thank you very much, panelists, for the great discussions. I think